I think for me, mainly is just the work that I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
This journey that I was on, to be very deliberate about what controls my actions, what controls my thoughts first,
Mm-hmm.
then what controls my actions.
Rose Nzyoka is a development leader with more than 20 years of experience advancing digital health across Kenya, South Sudan, Tanzania, Nigeria, Namibia, Zambia, South Africa, and Eswatini. She has supported ministries of health and worked on major USAID, CDC, UNICEF, Helen Keller Foundation, and Caritas International programs. Her roles span country director, chief of party, deputy chief of party, and knowledge management lead with organizations including Palladium, Apt Associates, the University of Washington, and Barclays. She previously served as co chair of the Global Digital Health Network and now serves as its board president. She is also a board director at Palladium Kenya, an advisory committee member for the Aspen Institute's East Africa chapter of the Aspen Network of Development Entrepreneurs, and an advisory committee member at the Shandaria Business School, USIU. Her professional focus is on digital health governance, policy, and strengthening national systems to deliver sustainable results. She is a mentor, coach, and keynote speaker on matters related to mindset and leadership. She's preparing to launch her mindset and leadership podcast, Rewire with Rose, so watch out for that. Well, Rose, that is quite an introduction.
Quite a mouthful, right?
Yes, quite the mouthful. And what an impressive
Uh-huh.
introduction that is. Thank you so much for being here with me today on the Savvy Shift podcast. I'm very excited to have you.
Thank you for having me. I look forward to the conversation.
So
Yeah.
usually how I start these conversations is going a little bit into your own origin story that kind of tells the audience how you got to be doing the amazing work that you're doing today. And then we can kind of branch off from there for different kinds of discussions.
All right. So maybe my origin story into speaking, mentorship, and coaching, perhaps.
Sure.
So throughout my career, which has been 20 plus years, mostly in development, like you said, I did realize that there were challenges that I was facing as a person. And I didn't know where these challenges were coming from. And one of the challenges that I was facing was just not wanting to get into management and leadership. I did good technical work. I rose up to the highest level as technical director, and I was being asked to take on leadership roles, and I was not willing to take them on. I just did not want to manage people. And later, when I looked back and, asked myself the question where this came from, I realized this was coming from a limiting belief that I'd held. And this was shaped very early by my childhood experiences. A situation where I grew up away from my parents and my siblings. And you know how a child, we are told, interprets that as rejection.
Mm-hmm.
So even though I didn't have any issues, I did not struggle, I had a great childhood. I saw my siblings and parents occasionally up to the age of 12 years. And looking back, I realized that shaped how I view people and situations that involve people. So a part of me was not wanting to expose myself and put myself in a situation where I could be rejected.
Uh-huh.
So I approached my career and professional journey from that point. And looking back, because I realized that was really holding me back, eventually I got into management and leadership and struggled with these feelings somehow and managed and coped. But later in life, as I grew into my leadership journey, I realized that it was not unique to me. You know, I encountered many people, especially women, that were
Uh-huh.
struggling with issues they couldn't even put a finger on. And often these were limiting beliefs that were grounded when they were growing up. Some
Mhm.
of them, it was rejection like me. Others, it was issues to do with inadequacy because maybe the only time they were praised was when they brought home a good report.
Mhm.
So this made me get interested in helping other leaders, mid-career professionals, especially entrepreneurs that are struggling to grow their business, to find out, to dig deeper and find out what are these things that are driving the decisions that they make or fail to make every day.
Mhm.
So that's where this stems from, helping others to cope with what I identified as a challenge that I was dealing with that was
Mhm.
limiting me at the time.
Mhm. So,
Yeah.
walk me through your own personal journey then, just in terms of how you dealt with those limiting beliefs and, maybe how you grew along the way. Because
Mhm.
obviously these limiting beliefs, they're very deep rooted inside of us, from our
Mhm.
childhood. And sometimes we might not even realize that they're there. So I kind of want to talk
Mhm.
about your journey of dealing with your own limiting beliefs and like what were the
Mhm.
things that you had to like reprogram within yourself and how did you do
Mhm.
that?
Yeah. So when I became aware about these beliefs, especially this core belief around, you know, rejection or this wound, um,
Mhm.
and how it was manifesting is that I was not willing to put myself in a situation where people would reject me, or
Mhm.
and not that they had rejected me, they had not. It's just that my mind told me that it's a possibility that it could happen.
Mhm.
So when I realized about them, I realized them through a process. I went through coaching, mid
Mhm.
management coaching, and
Mhm.
through these coaching sessions, I was able to now identify and put a finger to this thing that was keeping me struggling and keeping me, wanting to just settle for status quo and for, just a job that I could control, where I could do the work myself without having to require others and without having to manage others and without having to need anyone to do a good job. So when I identified this through that coaching program, what I did is I went through a process of first, identifying and naming these limiting beliefs that I had. So I
Mhm.
went through a lot of introspection, a lot of journaling, to just identify what was my growing up like and what were the circumstances that surrounded it. And this exercise is something that I did for a long time. The coaching program was 3 months, but I continued to do that for a whole year. Sometimes I would wake up and find there was something that I didn't know was there, but was there. So I journaled a lot. I introspected to ask myself the question, what informed this action? What informed this decision? Then I came up with a set of limiting beliefs that were really top on the
Mhm.
list. And like I said, top on the list for me was rejection,
Mhm.
and the belief that people will leave you.
Mhm.
Love is not conditional. People will not always choose you, and people will not always pick you. So I guess, as an adult, the adult me at the time was finding that really, weird. Like, why was the child me interpreting the fact that my parents and siblings were not with me is them failing to pick me, because I was
Mhm.
not struggling. I didn't struggle. I
Mhm.
can't really say I struggled. It was a great childhood. I was living with my grandmother. She spoiled me. I had a great environment around me. So through this introspection and this journaling, when I identified this as a core belief, then I started working towards it. I started developing now counter beliefs and counter affirmations. To every time I found myself in a situation where I was thinking, oh, why did they say that? Did they say that because maybe they don't like me? I would pick that and I would understand where that is coming from. That is coming from the child me that was living with this wound. So I learned a process of easily identifying the beliefs that were driving my decisions, and also I got into a lot of study. I studied a lot of material around subconscious programming. I did a lot of work to affirm myself and do affirmations. I'm a Christian, so I studied the Bible as well, the Word of God, and what it says about me. And I identified, from the Word of God, what does the Word say about my identity, about who I am. And every morning I got into routines that helped me to keep saying these things to myself. Other things that I included in this routine where I was affirming myself was, remembering times when people have been good to me. People have told me, you are good at this. People have told me, you do this well. So I would remember those times and I would keep affirming myself that, this is just a belief, it's not reality. So I found that with time, as I continue to do this and as I continue to institute these routines, this limiting belief somehow I just became confident in myself. My identity shifted. I now almost had a new identity. I knew who I was, and it was easy now for me to apply myself fully and put my hand up for opportunities that were available for me. And that's the reason why I was saying, like earlier, that I have found I found it necessary to speak to other people about it.
So
Yeah.
for you, how long did
Mhm.
that whole process take from when you started to where you are now?
I think it took quite a while. Let's say the dramatic changes that I saw were within the 6-month period. That's when I saw dramatic changes, where I could be able to quickly, even in a conversation, pick that no, there's a problem there, or in a thought, or in a way that I have shown up in a meeting, or in a work-related activity. I was able to very easily identify. So that the dramatic changes were within 6 months. And after that, it's a process that I've continued. You just continue with this process. Sometimes you think all limiting beliefs are gone, and then you find, there's something that has lingered on longer. So I can say within the first 6 months, I saw changes. And then let's say within a year, 2 years, I was no longer struggling with this issue, especially the issue around rejection. Yeah.
Okay. So when you were like, oh, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about next was when you're dealing with these things, and sometimes you think that you've dealt with your beliefs and you're going along your way and you're like, yeah, I'm awesome at this. And then all of a sudden something comes along and triggers you and you realize that you still have those limiting beliefs. So I wanted to talk about that and how we can go about working through those triggers.
Yeah. For me, I think it's a lot to do with what environment are you surrounding yourself with. You know, I found that the more I surrounded myself with an environment that was supportive of this new journey that I was making, the easier it became for me. And the easier it became for me to either do away with triggers or recognize them very quickly. So, one of the things that I did was I became very conscious about how people were speaking around me. You know, conscious about anytime somebody makes a negative statement or says a statement that is related to a belief I'd held. I would very quickly counter that in my mind, where I would tell them that, that's not that's not so, or I would correct them. But there are situations where I just counter it in my mind. And there are other situations where I removed myself from those uh, relationships that had negative talk. The
Mm-hmm.
other thing in the environment that was very useful for me was to continuously keep myself informed about, read more, listen more, to podcasts, to material that helped me to reinforce this new journey that I was on. So I identified, people that talk about, um, especially the science side of things, the
Mm-hmm.
science side of how thoughts affect our actions, and how thoughts affects our feelings, and then how feelings affects our actions, and how our actions affect our results. So I went into that whole rabbit hole, and did a lot of research, did a lot of reinforcement through both what I was reading, but also what I was listening to. So that's another area that I changed in my environment. But also I instituted these routines. So the
Mm-hmm.
routines that I had begun, it was, I must say, it was not easy at first, because habits take time. you know they take time for them to form. So I reinstituted habits around me that enabled me to walk this path. So one of them, like I had said earlier, was journaling. I began to journal my thoughts, my feelings, my response to circumstances and situations. And journaling was a habit that took a while to form. You know, Initially, I would find that sometimes I skip many days I haven't journaled. But over time, it became something that I started to enjoy a lot, because the more I journaled, and maybe I would be writing something, and I identify, what was that about? So this took a while, but eventually it became a habit that is now formed. Um, Something else that I did along the way is to ensure that I was every time that I slept, or I found myself that I was going back to either my way of thinking or the way I was doing things. I wouldn't be too hard on myself, because when you're too hard on yourself, you can give up. You can give up on a journey. You can feel like, I cannot do this, or this is not for me. So I began to be kind to myself. Every time I found myself, I had that I had done, like journaling for a month without consistently, I would pat myself on the back, and this helped me to ensure that I was getting reinforced on this journey. However, I must say that, once in a while, I would still find things that would trigger me, uh, you know, and especially because I have worked for the longest time. I've been in a very male dominated world. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I would find myself in boardrooms, and, in situations where I want to shrink.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but those times reduced over time. The more I instituted these habits, the more it became easier for me. The other thing that I did was to get into accountability structures that help me, to stay consistent on this path. And accountability structures that I put around myself was structures like people that knew this journey that I was on, and that I would meet in a regular basis, and where we would give each other feedback, like how this journey is going on for you. For me, it was, specific beliefs that I was dealing with, and for other people, in within my accountability structure, was different things that we're dealing with. So all we were doing was to hold ourselves to account, and pat ourselves on the back, for what we were doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I wanted to talked about, because I know that you do some coaching, and you
Mhm,
do it mostly with female leaders and coaching. So I wanted to kind of dive into that side of things, because I've also worked in very male dominated spaces and continue to work in very male dominated spaces. And so I wanted to
mhm,
talk about your experience of what it was like to grow into your leadership in those kinds of spaces.
mhm,
You had mentioned like going into boardrooms and feeling like you want to shrink yourself. And so, how did you overcome that kind of initial, you know, reaction, I suppose, or like the instinct to try to shrink yourself versus standing confidently in yourself?
mhm. I think for me, mainly is just the work that I was doing.
Mm
This journey that I was on, to be very deliberate about what controls my actions, what controls my thoughts first,
hmm. Mm
then what controls my actions. The reason why I'm very keen on the area of mindset coaching, is because for me, that was a game changer.
hmm. Mm
It's the thing that helped me to really be able to stand confidently in my space, be able to not shrink, because the more I worked on my mindset, to understand that, and to pick thoughts before they form. Or when I find myself, there's a stream of thoughts that's going to stop it from happening,
hmm. Mm
the easier it was for me to sit confidently. So I really, really focused on my mindset, reading the right books, reinforcing myself, reinforcing my thoughts, reinforcing my behavior consequently. But one of the things that I found out, and I've continued to see in women, and that's why it interests me a lot to coach women, is that women are very different from men in terms of how we show up. I don't know what your experience has been, but from my experience, women, we tend to shrink ourselves a lot more. You
hmm.
know, I have found in my journey that many times, for people that I've supervised, the women will underestimate their achievements.
Mhm.
Like when you're having a performance conversation, women will tend to underplay their performance, while men will tend to overplay their achievements. Or
Mhm.
sometimes when you have an opportunity for a promotion, many times, if a woman does not tick off all the boxes for the requirements, she will not put her hand up for promotion.
Mhm.
But many times when a man meets even a few of those requirements, they will have their hand up. So that's one of the reasons why I've really wanted to work with women um, to help them to just be more confident and to go after these spaces and to be aware, because it
Mhm.
first starts with being aware that this is a behavior that has been observed. It's not just you, it happens to other people, it happens to other women. It's not that there's anything wrong with you, it's not that you're not enough or you're not able. It's something that has been observed over time. And I think even science has shown, just the nature of the way men are.
Mhm.
They are created to be hunters and to be alphas and to
Mhm.
lead, and therefore you'd understand the reason why it is easy for them to put their hand up when,
Mhm.
even when they don't have all the requirements together, or all the achievements together. So
Mhm.
it's helping women to understand that, and helping them to understand. So now that that's the space that you're playing in, how can you play to your advantage? And one of the things that I tell women is to just be conscious, to be conscious about this, to be conscious that we are wired differently,
Mhm.
but to just put your hand up, to have a plan, to have a career plan, because men will have the career plan anyway, and many
Mhm.
times they'll advocate for themselves. So it is equipping women with the tools that enable them to rise up better. And some of the tools are tools to help with mindset, tools to help them to rewire their mind on how they're approaching the opportunities that are given to them, and when they are shrinking, when they are showing themselves forth, when they are confidently speaking, etc. So it's to provide those tools. But the other thing is to also advocate for them, you know, and manage them differently. In that, when you're having a performance conversation with a man, they're likely to say where they see their career in the next 10 years. Most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time. But a woman, I've found in my experience, many of them will not, either they don't have the plan in place, or they don't feel like it's in their place to talk about that plan, or they feel like it's being too bloated, or being too vain to speak about how how the organization can meet their plans. So it's me deliberately advocating for the women that I have led, and helping them to craft these development plans for themselves, and helping them to see the opportunities around them and how they can prepare themselves and go after them as well. Yeah.
Did you ever experience throughout your career like instances where there was pushback for you being in these rooms where it's mostly men, or like feeling not welcome? And if that was the case, then how did you deal with it?
Mm. Um, I haven't experienced that per se, or if it's happened, I haven't perceived it. Maybe that's how I should put it. In fact, one time I remember someone asking me, "How do you manage in working and managing teams in places where it's mostly men?" And I told the person that I actually don't notice. I don't think about it that way. It wasn't always like that, because remember, initially when I was starting my management journey, I was struggling. But with time, I found my footing, and when I found my footing, I stopped noticing. I would just show up and do what needs to be done. However, I did have a situation when I was starting my leadership journey, where I was managing a person that, a male, who did not necessarily feel like I was the right person for that position. I think he thought he was the right person for that position. And to be fair, there were issues around how, uh, how the hiring went. And maybe if I can give the backstory. So this guy was the hiring manager for a certain position, which I interviewed for, and I became the top candidate. And he communicated to me that I'm the top candidate. So, you'll be joining me and working with me and the team. At the same time, the organization had a more senior position, which they thought I was suited for. So they shared this position with me and asked me if I was interested. And of course, I was interested. So I applied for that. I went through a series of interviews, and I was offered that position. So when I joined this organization, I joined at the same level with this gentleman, even though previously he was supposed to be my supervisor. And I think the communication hadn't been done very well. Because even at the time that I was joining, he was a bit concerned that he didn't know until really late in the day that I wasn't going to take up that position. So the position that we were reporting to, our manager at the time, that position became vacant after 1 year. And I was asked to act in that position. So this gentleman was now supervising him. So you can see how that did not go too well.
Yeah.
He was older. He had more years of experience than I did. I was going to join in as his direct report, and now here I am. I'm supervising him. So that was a bit of a challenging situation, but I did manage. And I mean, I could see where the issues were coming
Mhm.
from. So yeah,
Mhm.
that's the incidents that I can share that I've had. Otherwise, in generally in boardrooms, in situations where I found myself in with men in the room, I haven't felt different, and I think that has helped.
Yeah.
My mindset shift that happened a lot earlier when I was beginning this leadership journey helped me um, to show up knowing that I'm equal.
Mhm.
Like I'm not asking, I'm not asking for breadcrumbs, or I'm not
Mhm.
begging for that space. It's a space that I rightfully
Mhm.
deserve.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's an
Mm.
amazing mindset to have. So I'm
Thank you.
curious when you work with women, because one of the things we had talked about in our intro call was sorry, I have the notes here. Um, mm, 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 mm. Imposter syndrome. Sorry,
Mhm.
dealing with imposter syndrome. And so I think a lot of the time, because we spoke about the differences between men and women. I think everybody suffers from imposter syndrome, but I think, because men tend to put themselves out there more, that maybe they deal with it a little bit less or deal with it in different ways than women. And so I wanted to talk
Mhm.
about like the imposter syndrome that women feel when they go into these positions of leadership, and how you work with women, like how you see that manifesting with the women that you work with, first of all, and then how you work with them through that imposter syndrome.
Mhm. Yeah, so I see it manifesting sort of in the same ways, where you see women shrinking, like when you offer them an opportunity to act in a role, sometimes you will see women, they will either outrightly refuse, or say, I'm not sure I can do that. Or sometimes they won't say it, but you can see it. You can see someone is asking themselves many questions. And I've learned to anticipate that, in that every time I find myself in a situation where maybe I'm asking someone to step up their responsibilities, I am more conscious, and I have that conversation with them, so that it makes it okay for them, and they stop feeling like they're the odd ones out. I found
Mhm.
out years ago that actually one way of dealing with imposter syndrome is exposing it, and having people know that it's a common thing. It happens to many people, so it's not unique to them, and therefore it's not their fault. It's not a failure
Mhm.
on their side that they are feeling these things. So identifying it is one thing, naming it is another thing, and then how do you deal with it? And I've been working, the women that I've worked with, I tell them that the more you take steps, the steps, you might not, it's a marathon, it's not a
Mhm.
sprint. You're not saying that today you're struggling with imposter syndrome, and tomorrow you're not, or in a week you're not. It's a marathon. So
Mhm.
the more they make baby steps, the more those baby steps will keep reinforcing to them an identity shift. And when the identity shifts, then the imposter syndrome is manageable, or
Mhm.
is not there.
Mhm.
So it's affirming them, it's giving them an opportunity to take on more responsibility, pointing to them that they have done it, and therefore they can do it, and they can do even bigger things. Having them to surround themselves and with an environment that reinforces their new identity as compared to their shrinking person. Um, so I've also found myself encouraging women to uh, change the environment so that their mindset can change. Read books that help them to know how to deal with these things. Surround themselves with friends that have conversations around how you can do it, and you're able.
Mhm.
You're equally qualified.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, and also the other thing is to accountability structures. You know,
Mhm.
that's something that I really promote among the women that I work with, that just have an accountability structure around you, with people that are helping you to reinforce your new identity. Because if you don't have reinforcement, if you are just aware, we don't just get aware for awareness sake, because that doesn't help us. But once you're aware, and once you have the tools to help you to manage, how do you put structures in place that enable you to continually improve, continually feedback, and continually improve? And these structures could be at your place of work, it could be informal setup, it could be among your friends circle, it could be in church for those people that go to church, it could be anything, provided it's a structure that enables you to keep a habit. If some of the tools and habits you're working with is like journaling, for example, it could be a structure that enables you to remember. It could even just be something as simple as having a reminder on your phone at a certain time every day that reminds you that it's time to journal, or have you journaled? If another tool you're working with is maybe a tool like affirmations, maybe it's having a tape playing. Sorry, not a tape. Maybe it's having an audio file playing
Yeah.
at the back of your mind,
Yeah.
reinforcing affirmations, or music that helps you to calm down, or visualizations that help you to visualize the affirmations that you're using. So it's tools and structures that enable this mindset shift. Yeah.
Um, so when you were, because you talked a lot about environment and, cultivating the proper environment, what does that mean to you? Like, because we can go about it. Is it just the physical spaces that you're in, or do you also include like everything, like the people that you surround yourself with as well? Because sometimes it can be difficult when there are certain people in your life and they're not always being supportive. So how do you deal with those kinds of situations?
Yeah. So for me, environment, I think, is all environment. It's both the physical, because when you think about the physical, it's been proven, for example, that if you're around a cluttered space, it affects your mind. And if you're working on your mindset and you're moving on a journey to reinforce your identity and the positive you, and living, uh, you know, in your best life, a
Mhm.
cluttered environment will not help you.
Mhm.
So it's your physical environment, but it's also the people that you surround yourself with.
Mhm.
Personally, I have found that uh, some of the most important things that have reinforced this journey that I've been on have been my own exercises to do with mindset, top on the rather being journaling, and being listening to affirmations, affirmations that are either it is Bible-based affirmations, or it's subliminal messaging,
Mhm.
because science has proven that subliminal messaging helps to reinforce information to go to our subconscious mind, even when our conscious mind believes otherwise. And the second thing has been the people that I surround myself with. So
Mhm.
these practices, journaling and listening to audios that help me to reset or rewire my subconscious mind, and changing the or being very aware about
Mhm.
the people that I surround myself with has really helped. But sometimes, you can't change the people that you're with, that
Mhm.
are around you. Maybe sometimes these people are family,
Mhm.
or sometimes it's a colleague, and they have a certain way of doing things that triggers you.
Mhm.
And to me, how I have handled that is ensuring that the people that surround me are aware about this journey that I'm on. and I have let them know about the support that I would need from them.
Mm-hmm.
So, things like I did have someone that was in a work environment that was constantly just complaining, about the government, about, the things that are around, the traffic, there's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of negativity. And one time I did have a conversation with this person, just an informal conversation, like to realize that every time you're saying these things, you're reinforcing, because science has proven, the subconscious mind is very effective in translating those things that you're saying into actually being or becoming bigger or becoming worse.
Mm-hmm.
And that began a curiosity, and this person uh, did get curious about, what is this you're talking about science, and about every time I talk negative things, I attract more negative things around me. I told them, just try, you know, just try.
Mm-hmm.
One day, just wake up and think about how the traffic is going to be. Think about the traffic being excellent. Everything will work perfectly. I will have the best commute today. And another day, you know, think about think about the opposite and see whether there won't be a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting that they were able to just see a difference like that. And it began their own journey. I don't know where they are at now with that journey, but that's just some example of encouraging people around, to also be aware, because sometimes you assume people know. You
Mm-hmm.
assume that people know the impact that the mind and mindset has on our outcomes in life. And sometimes they don't. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
it's ignorance. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, so I find that very interesting though, like the more you focus on, because it's also like the reticular activating system, right? The RAS. And the more you focus on certain things, the more you'll see those things, right? So the more you're listening to like negativity in the news, the more you're talking about negativity, the more like you surround yourself with those people who do those things, then the more that's what you're gonna see in the world. So you have to
Exactly.
mhm. So you have to make
Yeah,
that
exactly. I was
mindset
going to
shift.
say, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that one of the things that I did years back is I stopped listening to news. Like
Mhm.
I don't watch news, because I found myself that every time I would be watching TV, not be getting angry, you
Mhm.
know, because there are always, bad news here, bad news here, bad news here. And I would find myself feeling bad and feeling awful at the end of watching news. And because I was aware about thoughts and how thoughts affect your feelings and then your actions and how you can attract negativity through your thought pattern, I decided to just stop. And from when I stopped, I can tell you uh, I had a lot of peace. I've had a lot of peace
Mhm.
because whether I watch or I don't, I will not change a circumstance. I will not change a war. I'll
Mhm.
not stop a war from happening. But if I watch and I see children that are injured, that are bleeding, that are crying, I'll feel bad about it. And
Mhm.
while it might not affect um, the war, it might not bring more wars, but it might bring negative circumstances around my life because now I will
Mhm.
spiral. I'll go
Mhm.
down a spiral of feeling bad, feeling sad, and just upset. And why do these things keep happening? And yet I have no control, you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I try the best that I can to focus on the things that I can control and shift those. If I can control the kind of thoughts that I put in my mind, then I focus on those. What I
Mhm.
can't control, I I stay away when
Yeah.
I can. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a really healthy way to look at it. I try to stay away from the news as much as possible as well because Like, really, I think the news is just fear-mongering most of the time, and people, people, as we said, like, they get programmed through the television programming, and so the programming is I sometimes I feel like it's specifically designed to make you angry or resentful or to spread fear and hatred among people. And so when you cut that from your life, you start inviting much more peace into your life and you can focus on the things that matter. Or not that,
Exactly.
horrible thing like wars don't matter, but again, you can't control it, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Exactly. And also it's the way, with news, it's negativity sells.
Mhm. Yeah.
Negativity sells news because
Yeah.
it's the algorithm when you think about it. They want to be able to reach more people. And
Mhm.
if they it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that negativity sells. You
Mhm.
you will hear things like scandals. Scandals are the ones that will hook people,
Mhm.
onto TV. So news people will try and get these stories that will get more views because that's how TV channels that's how they get their
Mhm.
remuneration. That's how they're paid.
Yeah.
The more eyeballs that you have, the more you can retain people watching, the better it is, the better your profit will be. So I guess they're incentivized, for lack of a better word, to keep this news going that is not the best.
Mhm. Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. So, um, one of the things I wanted to talk about before we wrap up here, because I know you have another engagement, but I wanted to talk about, we had spoken about this briefly in our intro call about balancing leadership with femininity. And so, how do you do that in your own life? And how do you coach other women leaders to do that? Because, again, as we kind of already mentioned, you know, um, whether or not it's right, whether I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but men tend to be seen more as leaders. And so then, a lot of the time, leadership qualities tend to be seen as masculine qualities. And so
Mhm.
as women, when we're coming into these leadership positions, it can be difficult for us sometimes to embody what would be seen as typical um, leadership characteristics and traits, but also maintain our femininity while we're doing that. So I wanted to kind of talk about how you balance that yourself and then how you coach other women to do that too.
Yeah, it's a very, very valid point, and it's really, I would say, the elephant in the room, in that many times when women find themselves in position of influence and positions of leadership, the tendency, because the people that are around you are most of the time men, especially
Mhm.
in the tech space, in entrepreneurship, in many spaces. You
Mhm.
find in senior leadership, it's mostly men. The
Mhm.
tendency is to show up with masculine energy, you
Mhm.
know, show up and, speak loudly and try to, dominate conversations. But that can be very exhausting because
Mhm.
you're showing up in energy that is not in the way that God created you. It's not how you are endowed.
Mhm.
So how long can you go? Many women find themselves very exhausted when you start showing up with masculine energy because it's not how you're wired.
Mhm.
So for me, how I show up and how I encourage women that I work with is, use femininity to your advantage. You
Mhm.
know, we are created with feminine energy. Feminine energy is calming energy. It's empowering. It's not aggressive, you know
Mhm.
so show up with your strength instead of focusing on your weakness. um Increase Focus on your area of strength, and your area
Mhm.
of strength is feminine energy.
Mhm.
So for me, I show up just as myself. I don't try to be who I'm not. I don't try to for example, I'm an introvert.
Mhm.
That's my personality. I don't try to be an extrovert. No,
Mhm.
because it's exhausting.
Mhm.
The more you try to be who you're not, the more exhausting it is. I just show up as myself. I know as an introvert, there are areas that as a leader I have to work on because, I draw my energy from introspection. I draw
Mhm.
my energy from my quiet time. And
Mhm.
yet, as a leader, there are situations where you're required to network, to go out there and meet people and generate business and all that. So
Mhm.
I ensure I look at what are my strengths. So my
Mhm.
strength as an introvert is that I can analyze rooms very well. I can tell energies very easy. So I play that to my advantage. That has been my approach.
Amazing.
Mhm.
Amazing. So thank you so much, Rose. I know that you have another engagement, so I'm going to respect your time and end it here. Is there anything else that you wanted to touch on briefly before we end things? Or
Um, no, maybe just to say that as women, we are in an era of a lot of information.
mhm.
So it would be best if we used the information as much as we can. It used to be that you needed to, for example, buy tapes years ago. If
Mhm.
you want to listen to like affirmations or things like
Mhm.
those. But
Mhm.
now we have AI that can easily make for you an audio tape,
Yeah.
for your favorite affirmation. So, like, for
Mhm.
example, if you're a Christian and you don't want to listen to everything that is out there that you're not sure about, you can make your own.
Mhm.
You can make your own Bible based affirmations, etc.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, so to use the information age to our advantage.
Yeah, amazing. And what
Yeah.
is the best place for people to connect with you online if they are looking to get in contact with you?
Yeah, they can connect with me on LinkedIn, Rose
Okay.
Nzyoka.
Okay.
I will share my link, but they can
Yeah.
also connect with me on YouTube. I'm just about to launch a podcast, Rewire with Rose, about mindset and leadership, so they can connect with me there. Thank you.
Amazing.
And
Yeah, and we'll
Instagram, the same, Rewire with Rose, the same
okay.
Instagram handle. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Amazing. Well, thank you again so much for being here with us today, Rose. I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope you did as well.
Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed it as well.
Good, good. So
Yeah.
have an amazing day. It's evening for you. My day's just starting, but
Yeah, it's evening for me. Enjoy
yeah,
your day. Have an
I
amazing one.
will.
Thank you so
Okay.
much, Sam, for having me.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
DJ Savvy.